get into it now. Um, so again, focusing on the Atlantic South this time, getting a good bit more of the NA teams out of the way. Next time, I'm still deciding on what division to do next, but either way, focus right now is the Atlantic South. Atlantic South consists of, in alphabetical order, the Atlanta Reign, Florida Mayhem, Houston Outlaws, Philadelphia Fusion, and Washington Justice. Um, Honestly, this is a really, really exciting division. Um, Mostly because there's a few unknowns. There's a lot of really, really good players in here, like tons of talent. Um, I'm gonna be honest. When we looked at the Atlantic North last week, I think that's probably the weakest division in the entire league. Just overall, I just don't think I don't think Boston would be doing very well in this division if you swapped them out for any of the teams in the Atlantic South. So just to give some perspective, I think the teams in this division are pretty strong overall. But with strong competition means um, really really good teams are going to lose to even better teams. So at some point, one team's got to be better than another, whether it be record wise, whether it be flexibility wise. So yeah, let's just kind of get to it. First team is kind of starting off with a banger, honestly. The Atlanta Reign. So, preview last year. Everyone knows Atlanta Reign made the playoffs, went through a losers bracket run, I believe, made it to the finals, and did really, really well up and through the losers finals, beating the Dallas Fuel, beating the Shock, um, and then in the end coming to finals and getting 4-0 swept by the Shanghai Dragons. Um, Showed really, really good performances versus a lot of those teams, forcing a lot of teams to play their game, especially like forcing teams like Dallas to switch off Monkey and forcing sim brawl mirrors, right? They only lost one map versus Dallas. They did really, really well versus overall. They looked really good in the playoffs, um, playing what they were best at, right? They're playing a comp that probably Double Shield wasn't going to be very good in that matchup, in that kind of in the setup versus like ball comps that other teams were playing versus Winston comps probably wasn't going to work very well. Did a good job playing brawl and kind of making the best out of it, but in the end, their inflexibility kind of bit them in the ass towards the end, and was really why they weren't able to finish it. Right, got them second place, being really good at brawl and being really good at that play style, got them in second place. But gonna be honest, that kind of inflexibility doesn't win you championships. So going into this next season, they've made a lot of changes. Some really important pieces left, but also they brought in a lot of very good ones and some very promising talents. So I'm honestly really excited. So team now is Gator and Hawk tank line still returning. It'll only be one of them playing, obviously. DPS is Kai is returning with the additions of Nero and Venom, and then a full new backline of OG and Ultraviolet. So, first off, start with the. Let me pull my notes real quick. So, obviously, grand finals last year. Played really well into a lot of really, really good teams, but lost to the dominant Shanghai Dragons because, a little bit of compositional inflexibility. Stuck on an inferior macro comp, honestly. Brawl is just not that good macro wise, but they did a really good job playing with it. Super strong cores returning, but they did lose a lot of important pieces. So, first off, let's start with the strengths of this team. First and foremost, Kai, I think, is probably he's at least one of the top three hit skins in the world, right? Pure hit skin players, insane aim. Just he's one of those players that you can change how your team plays macro wise because you know Kai's just gonna hit shots, right? His aim is absolutely insane. He's always consistent too, which is something you can't really get from a lot of hit scans, right? He is pushing towards like that ons kind of level of hit scan talent. He's insane. He's a freak. So having that return, he is one of those people that allows you to overcome macro disadvantages, right? He's not as flexible as other kit players. He doesn't have a Sombra, he doesn't have a Tracer really under his belt, but his Ashe, his McCree, and Cassidy, his Widow are insane. He's so good at those characters, and you cannot emphasize how impactful that is in allowing you to play kind of around that, right? They can play comps like Brawl that aren't as good because you just know Kai's going to hit shots, right? I was watching a VOD earlier of when they were playing against like the Hunters, and they were playing against like a Ball, Sombra, Pharah, Mercy comp, right? It's really hard for Brawl comps to work versus that. And they just won maps. They won fights because Kai flips a corner and double taps Jinmu, forces him out, and then Hawk's able to fly on him. It's insane. Dude's a freak. So, I mean, having top three, probably top two hit scan in the world is such a powerful thing for this team to have. Second strength is their backline. I it's hard to it's hard to overstate how good OG and Ultraviolet are, right? Um, Seriously, These two are probably the most promising support prospects we've had as a duo in probably maybe even league history. Legitimately, these two are so good. They have a history. They've performed so well in the past on so many teams for so long, and they just haven't been able to make the league because they've been underage. But they both finally turn 18 as the league turns around, and this is one of the most exciting things to happen, right? OG has been one of the best main supports in the world, but he just hasn't been 18, so he hasn't been able to play. And Atlanta gets their hands on him. He's played with some of these players before, or at least he's friends with them, and he's on a full Western team or a mostly Western team with a lot of kind of the best players or the best kind of pieces that the West has to offer, like Kai, best hit scan. Putting these guys who have this years and years of success, OG through what was it, through American Tornado, through Team Envy, through Team Doge, right? Bobby Wasabi later, like towards the very end, right? Just all these teams he was on, so good. Tier 2 Drama Alert Nation, like these guys are insane. They're so good. OG has everything you need from a main support. Insanely talented Lucio player, probably one of the best Mercies in the world, probably one of the best Briggs in the world too, right? Mechanically, he is definitely the most. He's one of the most probably top three, four most talented main supports, just straight up mechanically on Lucio and Brig. He's extremely smart. He's been playing for a long time. He's been succeeding for a long time. Um, Honestly, it's like he's got a Baptiste too. He's extremely mechanically strong there. I just don't think there's any competition for him when it comes to Western main supports. The only person you could probably say is up there is like maybe Moth was, but Moth isn't in the league anymore. And I mean, Funny Astro is probably a better mechanical Lucio, but he doesn't have the flexibility of OG. So this is really kind of game changing for someone like Atlanta, who last year was stuck with Massa. Massa's a great Lucio. He's good mechanically, but he's fallen off a lot, and also he's just not flexible at all. Massa does not have the Brig or the Mercy to be able to compete at a championship winning level, right? He could be in the league, which is fine, but he's not like having someone who doesn't have that flexibility to play a Brig and play a Mercy or a Baptiste at Overwatch League level really, really hinders your progress. And I honestly think Massa was a really big problem on Atlanta. Going into metas that they can't just play Brawl, can't just play Rush, and Massa has to play Lucio or Mercy, he's a liability. So having someone like OG is an extremely, extremely good upgrade in that position. And then on the other side of it, other part of his duo, Ultraviolet, kind of the same story. He hasn't been in the league for a long time because he's been underage. He's been on so many teams since, I mean, looks at 2018, so it's been but almost 4 years, just being in contenders for so long, playing on a bunch of teams, and he's just a mechanical freak, right? Probably the most mechanically talented Western flex support alongside Crimzo. Extremely, extremely good. Played on AT for a long time, Tier 2 Drama Alert Nation, Redbirds, right? He's been competing for so long, super talented, and this backline is going to be one of the best in the league. Definitely one of the best in the league. Up there with the Gladiators, up there with like Shanghai. I think they're going to be so good. And playing around this backline and having this kind of flexibility and consistency is insane. Seriously can't be understated how good these guys are. Um, Outside of that, other strength that I had was just like this returning tank line. I have ragged on Gator and Hawk a lot in the past because their inflexibility does show a lot. Like Gators, Winston, and his ball just don't compete at the league, but his at the league level. But his Rhine and his Orisa, Rhine and Brawl, and his Orisa in Double Shield is very strong, right? He's got his niches and he does very well in those. Same thing with Hawk. Hawk has a very good diva when he's playing Brawl, right? He has a very good Sigma in Double Shield, but there's obviously there's gaps. Like, I don't think Hawk's a fantastic diva when it comes to like ball comps. He's not bad. He's definitely not bad, but he's not Void. He's not Hanbin, right? I don't think he's competing at that level. But they're consistent. They've been playing together for a long time. There's obviously not that synergy anymore, but I do think they're going to provide between the two of them. Someone's going to be able to pick up ball, I assume. Um, I mean, I hope hope someone's going to be able to pick up ball, and I think they'll be able to cover kind of anything you need in tank. So I think that's really like a good core to build around with this tank line, with the support line, and having Kai there. That's at least a very, very strong core to play around. You can do basically anything with that. So I'm super excited for that. Weaknesses. As I mentioned before and was talking about before, probably going to be your tank and flexibility, right? Both in Gator and Hawk are very good at their at very specific niches, right? As I mentioned before, like their brawl and double shield is very, very strong, but those don't exist anymore. And we don't really know how Tank's going to play in the end. There's a lot of people that are saying Tank's going to be a lot slower, and a lot of Overwatch 2 is going to be slower because there's a lot more map space to play around. There's a lot more staging, a lot more setting up. So maybe that's going to be more necessary going into Overwatch 2, and we don't really know if these guys can adjust to that. They're very good at their fast play style, very good at playing together. So um, that's just kind of an unknown, and I'm wondering if that inflexibility is going to hurt them going later on. Other weakness is just kind of a general loss in a few areas. Number one, the elephant in the room, honestly, is losing Pelican. Pelican is a nutcase. Such a good mechanical flex DPS. He is also another one of those reasons why they could play Brawl versus like ball comps that Shanghai and um, what's it called? Chengdu were playing. He was one of the reasons they could do that because he could play Tracer at a super high level. He could play Echo at a super high level. He could play Pharah at a super high level. His Mei was probably the best in the world. I'd say that right now. I think Pelican's got the best Mei in the world, and they're able to play Brawl because he can do just things that other people can't do. Perfectly timed walls, really good aggression, mechanics to back it up. Pelican's insane. And Nero's good. I think Nero's a good player. I think he's very, very mechanically talented, but he's not Pelican. I don't think he's that talented. I think he's very good, and I think he's a very good addition to this team, and he fills a gap, but I don't think he's Pelican, right? So that's a little bit of a downgrade. Another downgrade is losing Unter. Obviously, I haven't worked in this team before. I don't talk to many of them. I've never talked to them before, so I don't really know how the inner workings of this team work. But according to a lot of people, Unter was a very impactful part of their team, very impactful in the back room. Um, so, I mean, losing that seems like a pretty big loss. Again, I can't really say anything about that. That's kind of an unknown. But apparently the players loved him. A lot of people talk about him. They talk very highly of him. So that seems like a pretty big loss. But I think Pelican is probably the biggest loss this team suffered. Um, and then kind of going into coin flips. I know I gushed about OG and Ultraviolet for a long time, but there is a chance that they don't hit in the league for whatever reason, whether it be they just they've been in kind of this echo chamber for so long and they can't compete with a bunch of different types of players or anything like that. I mean, you hear stories about them spawn camping owl teams and scrims and stuff like that. So we don't really know. Yeah. Ceased. Shut up. I'll kill you. Baseless statements by I watched the VODs. That's my evidence. But UV and Ultraviolet, while there is a lot of stories about them like spawn camping owl teams, and they've definitely performed in tier two a lot, there is a small chance they don't perform in the league. I think they're going to. I have full faith in them. I think they're generational talents. I think they're going to be the best in the world at some point. It's just there is obviously a chance they don't hit. They're banking a lot on them, but I personally think they're going to hit. There's a chance they don't. Kind of as mentioned before, can Nero fill Pelican's shoes? Again, Pelican was arguably the best flex DPS, one of the best flex DPS in the world. It's definitely the best Mei in the world. Um, and I don't really know if Nero can fill that. I will say the addition of Venom, I haven't talked about Venom yet, is extremely exciting because I watched Venom a lot when he was in NA. Um, he's just one of those players that he's got this gravitas about him. When you're in lobbies with him and you see he's playing Tracer, there's some kind of aura about him because you know he's going to do something. No matter how much you do to try and stop him, Venom makes things happen on Tracer. He is so good at that character. Obviously, he's been out for a little bit. He hasn't been playing, but if he can come into the league in the form he was in NA Contenders, he's going to be one of the best Tracers in the league. He's going to be up there with Proper and Striker, right? He's just that talented. So, and he's going to be up there like with Yaki, with those. He's going to be at least as good as players like Yaki, and he's going to be pushing up with players like Striker, with players like Proper. And I feel like that Nero Venom combination will be able to fill in the gap for Pelican because Nero doesn't really have the tracer that Pelican did, but he can kind of match up on Echo and Pharah. Can't match up on Mei really, but maybe he can improve on that. But having that addition of Venom, I think those two together can really kind of match up to the gap that's going to be left by what's it called? That's going to be left by Pelican's loss, the like Pelican moving on to the Outlaws. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to sleep on Venom just because he hasn't played in a little bit and he only played in any contenders for a little bit. But anyone who was there to watch him really knows the kind of impact that he had as an individual, right? Him playing on Odyssey was one of the most insane things I've ever witnessed. He's just a freak of nature. So I'm extremely excited to see him in the league. He deserves it. He's performed super highly in the past. And then kind of last but not least, my last question mark coin flip is kind of about the backroom staff and kind of how this team's going to come together as a unit. Because the biggest issue with Atlanta wasn't really individual talent last year. I mean, sure there were some weak points, like some tank and flexibility, right? Or like I think Massa was a pretty big weak point for them when it came to flexibility. But I'm wondering if the staff and if the team here can put themselves in a position to succeed in multiple metas. What I mean by that is that Atlanta really thrived in these rush or brawl metas, but they weren't able to adjust to play in metas where it was like your Zen Brick backline, right? Or when they're playing like Echo Mercy. You just, I mean, they were like fine, but they weren't championship competing teams, right? Where on the other side, you look at a team that wins championships, you look at Shock, like from 2020, they were able to adjust to a lot of different metas, whether it be Double Shield or whether it be Hog Sig, or 2019 when it came to Goats versus the Double Shield, like Fortnite Goats meta eras, right? They were able to adjust. Championship teams can adjust to different metas, right? You can't. It's really really hard to just kind of bank on chance and end up being like, oh yeah, like we'll just kind of the meta will come in the playoffs and we'll be fine, right? That's just not how this league works, right? So you need to be good at a lot of things, and I would like to, I guess, challenge this team to be able to adjust, and be able to play different metas at a super high level and be able to adjust quickly because they've had a lot of troubles with that in the past. And, that's kind of on their staff and kind of on their team as a whole, you know? So I think that's like that kind of flexibility is really that's going to be the biggest question for this team going into the league. Like, can they adjust to playing other compositions and playing other kinds of comps at the level that, is required of a championship level team? Um, They still have Danny. Danny is an assistant coach now. He was a data analyst before. So now they have Sefi and Danny, right? Or Sefi is Danny. I don't know. Sefi is also Brad. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. I was like, Sefi also goes by like a real person name rather than just Sefi. So he's Sefi and then Danny is assistant coach. So they have coaches definitely, but they lost Unter, so I'm wondering if they can kind of, you know, keep up, right, and adjust to probably what's going to be a fast shifting meta in Overwatch 2. Um, yeah, I'd actually agree with you. Base that Nero probably can't stack up to Pelican on Echo. I think Pelican is legitimately a generational talent on Flex DPS. It's extremely mechanically strong. Nero is very good, but I don't think he matches him on kind of any character. But it's not like it's not like you're going from Pelican to like a 4-5 player, right? You're going from Pelican to, a good player. Like Nero's good. Nero's very good, right? I don't want to sleep on Nero, but Pelican is a top 3, top 5 flex DPS in the world. Yeah. And then what's it called? Yeah, as you were saying about legit was a coach, I believe, and now he's like player manager. I don't think he's doing as much of a coaching role. So they have like a lot of staff and they have a lot of grouping, but it's really going to depend on whether that staff can, prepare this team to play in multiple kinds of metas in multiple situations, right? But in the end, I'm extremely excited for this team. There's so many good pieces that it's hard to overstate how exciting this team is going into to Overwatch 2, right? Um, yeah, this will be insane. I'm super excited, super excited. But moving on, we've talked about Atlanta enough. My hometown team. Next up is the Florida Mayhem. So, from the loss of Fran. Okay, so Florida Mayhem, hashtag bricked up. Greatest hashtag in Overwatch League history, actually. So, massive, massive shakeups on the Florida Mayhem. Tons of changes in staff, in roster specifically. Completely different, right? They lost Kuki. They lost, as you can see above, they lost 6 players. BQB checkmate. Well, checkmate for a little bit. He comes back. OG, Gargoyle, Slime, Gangnam Jin, Yaki leaves later. Tons of changes here. They don't have Kuki anymore. Gunba joins. They go towards more of a Western um, staff and pick up a new roster. Tanks being someone who's underage, Adam, and then DPS going to be checkmate. I mean, I guess you can count checkmate as a take, Lamau. And then DPS is going to be checkmate, mirror, Hydron, supports Majid, Onimo. So, strengths of this team. Lots of promising talent, actually. In my opinion, I think Hydron and Majid are extremely mechanically talented players. Hydron was obviously on Redbirds and on American Tornado, Tier 2 Drama Lord Nation 2, I believe. Or was that? Yeah, he was on that team too. I remember Ice played on one of them, yeah. But he played on talent teams with OG, Ultraviolet, right? That kind of dominant team. That kind of golden generation of Western players, right? Sorry, I'm getting. Sorry. Okay. So, like he played in that kind of generational group. Hydron's a very talented hit scan, right? His long range hit scans are very good, probably one of the best in North America. His tracer is very strong as well. He can play a lot. So having Hydron there is a very, very good first building block for a DPS for a really strong DPS core. Um, Also Sir Majed, you've heard legends of how he performed on like 150 ping from Saudi Arabia or from Europe. I don't remember where he was playing from, but he played in scrims and was just dominant mechanically. I'm super excited to see him play. He's been playing on Falcons most recently. He played on who was it? He played on American Tornado for a little bit. No, he played on Bobby Wasabi. Played on Falcons most recently, right? Yeah. So Falcons was the kind of most recent big one where he was kind of more well known. Raspberry Races before that. Super mechanically talented players. Anna and Zen are fantastic. I'm super excited to see him play. I think they've got a lot of promising talent in those two. Also Adam. Adam previously got signed to the Valiant, but that all fell through with all the Valiant shit. All that happened. Poor guy got cucked out of the league. So yeah, Adam's coming in. He was probably one of the most talented Australian contenders players ever, actually. So I'm super excited to see him come in here. Pretty talented off tank. He had a really good Sigma from what I've seen, and I think that's a really good addition. I think he's probably up there, probably better than someone like Punk. But he hasn't been proven yet, so we don't really know. But I think it's still really promising. Um, and sorry, let me just pull up my notes again. And a lot of like also kind of what's probably slept on from this team is like having a super talented role player like Mirror. Like Mirror gets a lot of flack for, not playing a lot of the really, really good characters, but he's got a very consistent like he does have a history of playing Zarya, playing Doomfist, right? Of these kind of very specific heroes that you need in very specific meta. So having a player like this is super helpful. We'll get to a little bit of the problems with this later, but still having that role player is something to, you know, have in your back pocket in case you really need it later, right? Is Moth a free agent? Is he retired? No one knows. Literally, no one knows about Moth. Like, no one has heard anything. Um, Free agent options about Mir and Anima, we'll talk about that after. We can talk about that later because there'll be more time to think about that kind of stuff. But weaknesses. Let's talk about weaknesses. So someone talked about Anima earlier. I think Anima is a so look, Anima is a very experienced and tenured player in the league, right? He's been around for a long time. He was on NYXL towards the beginning of the league, right? Playing with Arc. He's been a very consistent player. He's known for living for a long time. He has a lot of very good stats in the past. He's won a lot, right? But I think he's getting outpaced by a lot of other main sports in the league, right? You look at people like Skewed, who's playing Brig at a super high level. You look at people like Funny Asher. You look at like OG, right? You look at these players that are coming into the league. You look at like even like players like Drijiro, right? That are super talented main supports that are not only smart and don't die a lot, but they're also extremely mechanically gifted, right? Able to make plays when they need to because Overwatch is just such a fast-paced game that you need people that can make plays at any certain point in time, right? Like having people that are role players is good, but everyone needs the capacity to make plays, and I don't know if Anima has that anymore, right? I just don't think he can keep up with some of the higher level main supports in the league right now, right? Um, Also flexibility wise, if you get into a double flex support meta, can Animo play something like a BAP or a Zen or like an Ana at a high level that someone like a team like the Glads can do. Like, can the Glads can put Shu and Skewed in, right? Can Onimo match that? I just don't think so. Mechanically, like he's been in league for a long time. I'm sure he'll bring a lot of like veteran leadership to this team, but asking him to do more than that, I feel like it's a little bit of a tough ask. Um, Also, I think a big question for me, or a big kind of negative to me, is their second DPS. I talked about Hydron a lot. I think very highly of him. It's my NA bias coming out, right? But Checkmate showed some glimpses of hope last year, but he just wasn't consistent. That whole team wasn't very consistent at a lot of times. They had some very good performances in some very specific metas, but Checkmate wasn't playing in them, right? Um, yeah, and I just don't know whether Checkmate and Mirror as a duo is enough to make up for, the gaps that they're going to have. Like, there are so many good players in the league right now. So many good players. I just don't know if this team competes. And, like, what if you need a long range hit scan alongside a Tracer? Who plays Tracer? Like, Hydron's probably your best Tracer and your best hit scan. Who plays it? Checkmate? Mirror? I don't know. Like, who plays that Tracer in that? Hydron plays it, and then one of them picks up long range hit scan? I just don't see these two really being the second DPS that you really need to back up someone like Hydron. You know, um, I'm stretching. hmm Merritt being a good translator and team chemistry guy, that's super helpful. It's just I don't know, like I have to look at it from like a team like play perspective, and I just like that'll help a ton. That's super helpful when you're building a team, but I just can't speak to that myself, right? Yeah, it's not that Onimo just doesn't take away from his team, but he also doesn't add enough, right? You look at really good main sports that bring a lot to a team, like Lee Jae-gon brings a ton to his team, right? Mechanically, he does make a lot of mistakes. Like Lee Jae-gon does make a lot of mistakes, and he's very rash sometimes. But I don't know. It's just he doesn't kind of fit that role for me. And then kind of coin flips for this team. I'd say coaching staff. Coaching staff has a lot of returning leaders, right? People who are known as leadership figures, like McGravy and Gunba, are known as kind of leadership. Well, Gunba not as much, but McGravy is. And then the rest of that stuff, Gunba's coming from a break and some time in Valorant. I just don't know if he's going to be able to translate everything. If he's going to translate back very well, I'm sure he's smart, and I'm sure he's going to be able to, you know, move forward into Overwatch 2 and kind of provide a lot of leadership, provide a lot of guidance for this team. But I just don't. It's just one of those things that we don't know about yet. And then McGravy is kind of unproven to me as a coach. Never heard anything about him. I know he seems like a great guy and he seems like a good leader, good motivational guy, but I just don't know how much strategically he can bring in, right? Because as a player, he had a little bit of a people thought some very specific things about him, and I personally don't think his playing career was the best. And I mean, hopefully he can be a good coach. I really do. He seems like a great guy. It's just again, it's just gonna. I We don't know about their staff yet, right? Also, big question mark is someone hasn't played an official, I believe, since like May of right. Oh, really? No, it was more recent. Oh, because CC was playing that late. I feel like CC stopped in like May for some reason, but no. So he played towards like what is that, September? Yeah. But CC wasn't doing great towards the end. He played on a very good Team CC team, right? They were very good in when they played. Um, but they kind of got into it at the same time that O2 Blast was playing very well, and they weren't performing kind of what you'd expect from Team CC. But like the Chinese Team CC, they weren't really mirroring that. But still, look talented. We just don't really know yet about how he's going to perform. Kind of an unknown to me. I don't know if he's better than someone like Kellen. Like these other main tanks that are coming into the league now. I don't think he's better than someone like Reiner. Um, but who knows? I think he might be like a little bit worse than someone like Muse, and hopefully he can fill in, as a good main tank for this team. But again, that's a question mark. We don't really know. Well, I don't really know, right? Can't really say anything. Yeah. Um, yeah, McGravy was a coach on Dark Mode. He was with JMac for a little bit. Um, yeah, look, I like McGravy's personality. He seems like a very interesting guy. It's just as a player, he really was kind of he was part of the old guard, I'd say, in playstyle. Like that kind of agilities group of players where the league and kind of the game just evolved past them, right? So, I mean, like Gunba's done a ton of great stuff, so hopefully Gunba can kind of mold him into a really good coach. He seems like a great leader, obviously, as I've said a few times, but I really, really hope they can transfer this over and kind of, become a really good coaching staff because I'd love to see the dude work too well. Like I've shit talked him enough when it comes to his play. It's just kind of a meme, making fun of McGravy for like, he got the 6K bomb. Oh, the normies think he's fantastic when, his play wasn't that great. But, if he can improve, I think coaching is one of those roles that if you have a lot of experience playing, you can definitely push into like you know, just because you weren't, because just because when you were playing you weren't that great doesn't mean that you can't expand your knowledge and help impart your own knowledge upon other people, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't change your own mind, your own biases, right? Yeah, guys, McGravy got a 6K on Blizzard World, so he's the best player in the league. Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people are like, yeah, McGravy's like a really good diva. I don't know why he's not in the league anymore. Like McGravy's great. Why isn't he not in the league? It's like you got a 6K diva bomb. You got a 6K diva play on Blizzard World. How's he not in the league? How's Gig not in the league? Gig pinned the bomb. The Gig pinned the other Reining. They got a 6K bomb off that. What? How are they not in the league? But it's like people who kind of, most people know that they don't really belong in the league. But as a coach and as a leader, hopefully he can kind of, push past that and become a very, competent coach. I'm rooting for him. Hopefully he does well. I love seeing coaches do well. It's always cool to see. All right. So that's the Florida Mayhem kind of review. A lot of talented pieces. I just don't know how a lot of their like secondary pieces really compare to the rest of the league. Like how does their second DPS fit? How does their main support fit, right? How do their tanks compete with the rest of the league, right? A lot of really good pieces, a lot of really talented pieces, but there's a lot of question marks, a lot of unknowns with how a lot of these players will stack up to the rest of the league. Okay. Next is whew, Houston Outlaws. So, Houston, very interesting team. They lost Jongu. Let me just try to make sure I can double check. They lost Hydration in the middle of the year. They lost Dreamer. They lost Jongu. They lost Juby. Crimzo left. He went to Dallas. Happy left. Right. Um, yeah. And then returning players include Dante, Jake. Um, yeah, they lost Crimzo. Yeah, it was just Dante, Jake, Piggy. Fuck, dude. Dante, Jake, Piggy return, and the addition of Pelican, Iris, Lastro, and Merritt. I believe staff changes too. They still keep Junkbuck. They added Ho Chi Lee. I remember that. Jake is still kind of the coach, player, role, whatever he's doing. Maybe tank. No one fucking knows. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll get to it. But so let's first talk about kind of strengths going in with this team. Strength number one, their DPS are fucking insane, right? We gushed about Pelican enough earlier, right? Talked about him for hours. He's insane. Best main in the world. Insanely strong Tracer. Extremely strong far end Echo. Hanzo's probably insane too. Dude could probably play Bastion and Torb at an extremely high level as well. Dude's a menace, right? That is one of the best signings I've seen. Such a good addition, right? In addition, he's got Dante. So, even though Pelican is a really strong Tracer, if they want to play Dante and Tracer, they can do that. Right? Dante's Tracer is very, very strong. His Echo is very, very strong. His Sombra is extremely strong, one of the best Western Sombras in the world. Extremely mechanically strong player. And those two will be able to cover a majority of what you want to play, right? hmm And kind of looking at it, and like also as another addition to that, you've got Merritt. Merritt, who played on O2 Blast for a long time. O2 Blast, one of the best teams and contenders in recent history, right? Yeah, and as you said before, like Pelicans cast and his just aim in general is insane, right? You've also got Merritt who can focus on your long range hit scans, right? He was benching Kilo, I believe, for a little bit, right? Played on Old Runaway, and then the Old Runaway players got picked up to O2 Blast, and they performed extremely well. Merritt's very, very talented. We'll get to a little bit of a worries about him later, But either way, that DPS line is extremely strong. Dante's not the best player in the world. Shut up, Tyler. Do I think Dante or Pelican has a better tracer? um, maybe maybe Dante for now. I think Pelican's definitely better at like the more like Echo Pharah role. I think Dante's tracer is insane, so I just think Dante's probably better tracer right now. But I think Pelican can catch up. Pelican's been improving extremely fast. Very good player. So first strength is that DPS line. Another strength, in my opinion, is those two supports they picked up. I think Iris and Lastra are both extremely mechanically strong. Um, it's flex supports, right? It's also like young too, young and talented, right? Lastra's a little bit more proven, been in the league for a lot longer. He's been playing at a pretty high level for a long time. He's not what you consider like a super elite flex support, but he's good. He's very good, right? Iris is extremely talented. Wait, WoW guy? Was that who was WoW guy? Whose alt was that? Is it Dante? No, it's not. Fuck you. Is it Lastra's Valorant account? Okay. Yeah, Lastra is extremely mechanically strong. Iris is probably as good and is extremely promising as well. He's got a lot of space to grow, right? Iris is only proven on BAP, true, but he's played a lot of it. He's played a lot of it in Brawl and in Double Shield. I think he's very, very talented mechanically, and having Lastra to play the Ana and the Zen allows Iris to play that BAP if he really needs to, right? Um, I'm a little worried about their main support role, which is Jake. I mean, we can talk about that in a minute, but either way, having those two pieces, Iris can be your BAP player, Lastra can be your Ana Zen, and you've got a lot of really good coverage there. Um, yeah, I mean, BAP is definitely the easiest of all of them to be very good at, but you know. So going to kind of weaknesses. First off, Piggy. I think Piggy's good. He's a very good Sigma, very, very strong mechanically, but his Diva's fine. It's not fantastic, but it's fine, right? Um, very mechanically strong Sigma, but he's the only tank right now, literally the only tank. Um, and I don't know how that puts them up flexibility wise. Last year was a good brig too. I actually haven't seen his brig. Just like I mean, I just it's not something that I can think back to and really remember. But I know, but going back to Piggy, Piggy is good Sigma, but outside of that, if you got only one tank, is Piggy gonna play all of those? I don't really know. I really don't know what they're going to do about that. Maybe Jake teased playing some tank. Maybe they signed a tank that we don't know about, right? Maybe Dreamer comes back. We don't really know. Probably not. But, you know, Piggy, they didn't have a really good ball last year with Junggu. Junggu was really only a good Rhine. Um, Piggy was really only a good Sigma, and they're just lacking flexibility in that tank role. And that's really going to hurt them later on, I think. Maybe Jake plays tank. Maybe Jake learns that. I don't really know. Um, that's probably the biggest weakness, honestly, when it comes to this team. It's just tanks, right? Piggy is really only good at that one role, but outside of that, they've got a ton of really mechanically strong players, and I can see them pushing really, really far with what they have in very specific metas, right? Very specific roles. I think they can do very well, right? You've got people on their characters, right? Pelican can play like an Echo or a Pharah or like a May or a Torb or a Cass, right? He can play anything. You've got Merit who can play long range hit skins, can improve and can maybe not compete with the highest level yet, but he can in the future, right? With Merit grinding the off tanks, really, there's no way. There's no way Merit's playing tank for these guys, is it? No, we'll see about that. Again, that's just speculation. We don't know. We have no idea. But yeah, question mark is going to be that. And then also, I mean, another question. Well, actually, first off, question mark would be for actually just Jake, right? What are they going to do about main support? Is it going to be Lastra playing Brig, like someone mentioned? Yeah, I mean, off tank, his skins can play Zarya pretty well. So like Decay did it for a while, so I don't really. Prophet did it too, so you know. But either way, Jake as a main support, his Lucio, his Brig was okay. Mercy was fine. Can he kind of do that double role and play stuff like Lucio at a super high level? I don't know. He could probably play flex supports at a pretty high level, but that gives you three flex supports, right? He's got a lot of flexibility. He can play a lot of niche roles on DPS, right? I just don't know whether they have a lot of backline flexibility and tank flexibility. That's kind of the biggest worry to me. I'm not worried about their DPS at all. I think their DPS are going to pop off. They've got so many good ones, but there's just so much inflexibility around the table, around the board, that it's hard to really see what they're going to do with that, right? Although they do have Junk Buck is there's been a lot of very good things said about Junk Buck. Um, Obviously, Krusty the Disciple, a lot of people love him, right? Krusty really appreciates what he did, right? They've got a really, really good staff to build around, but we just don't. There's a lot of question marks around kind of the flexibility of the backline, but there is a ton of talent in this team, and I could see them doing a great job later on, right? Um, yeah, I think I probably have Crimzo over either of these flex supports, right? They're both good. They're both very good, but I think they're probably both downgrades over Crimzo. But it allows you to, focus a little bit. Maybe Iris can focus on his Bat Blaster, focus on the Ana Zen, that kind of stuff maybe. Um, we'll see. I think they're talented. I do think Crimzo's probably the better player, but there is at least some kind of solace in the fact that they have two of them and they can split time and kind of, focus on specific things. Either way, super, super talented pieces. They could do very, very well, but question marks with flexibility, especially on tank. Can Piggy fill the role of being a solo tank? Or is Jake going to fill in spots? Or is Merritt going to fill in spots? We don't really know. Can Piggy play more than just Sigma at a super high level? I don't know. I don't really know. That's my biggest concern. Their DPS though, I'm extremely excited to see them. Super, super excited. Right? Next, Philadelphia. Philadelphia Fusion. So, the perennial bridesmaid. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. The Philadelphia Fusion. So, sorry, I'm just doing a little reading. Okay. So, as we all know, very, very, very unfortunate circumstances for the Philadelphia Fusion. Um, Obviously, Alarm passed away, which is honestly massive, massive loss for this team. Not only as like a person, but just like if you're just looking at it from a player perspective, Alarm's probably top three flex supports in the world. Dude was insane, right? He was like the player for this team. So, um, it's a complete shame, and I hate to think of it in like I know it's the loss of a person, right? But I hate to, it's hard to think about that. But looking from a team perspective, that is an insane loss for this team, not only cultural wise, not only person wise, but just from a play perspective. That's just impossible to replace, right? And I really do kind of feel for someone like Aim God who has to come in and fill that role, right? Um, like Aim God has to come in and fill for someone who is kind of the child of this, this like org, right? He's been on Fusion Uni for a while, right? But like, did that's such a tough situation to deal with as an organization. He was their child, man. Like he'd been in this org for so long. So, you can only feel for them, but because of all that's happened, I seriously wish the best for this team. I mean, we don't really know, but you know, like given the circumstances and how much, has gone wrong recently, I really do wish the best for them, and I hope they do succeed, in Alarm's absence, because that dude seriously, seriously was a great, like a legend of the game, right? But focusing on now, looking at this team going in, last year they did, kind of meh, to be honest. Last year, made the playoffs, kind of knocked out at the end, right? They did pretty well in some tournaments, but just they weren't performing. They weren't great overall. I'm trying to remember their old team. What was it? It was Hotba was on the team. They left. Yeah, they lost Shockwave. They lost Toby. What was it? Toby Alarm was playing in the back line. They had Funny Astro for a little bit. They had Poco. They had Mono, right? It was Mono, yeah. hmm It was Carpe. It was Hisu. No, it wasn't Hisu at this point. Who the fuck was on this team, man? I'm just trying to remember now. Oh, here it is. Yeah. EQO left, Hoppa left, Funny Astro left, Poco left. Tons of change, tons and tons of change, right? But a few old names coming back, um, and there's a lot of promising talent here. So it's pretty interesting, right? I personally am not a massive Fusion fan. I grew up a London, not, I say grew up, but like I was originally a London fan. Um, and I liked seeing Philly lose, but but yeah, kind of going into it. Let's talk about strengths. Honestly, there's not a ton of strengths that really stand out about this team outside of kind of past glories. You know what I mean? Carpe, historically one of the greatest DPS of all time. Um, right? Like he's a strong tracer player, really really good cast. His Widow's legendary, right? He's one of the best ashes in the world. That's not talked about enough. His Ash is insane, right? People don't talk about that nearly enough, but his Ash is top tier, top tier. Super good Ash player, right? Pretty good Hanzo too, not the greatest, but his Ash, his cast, his Widow is very strong. His Tracer's passable, right? Pretty good, but pretty good strength. He's a veteran presence. He's been here for such a long time, and he's what this team builds around, right? Um, so that's definitely something to look forward to. Kind of going on that past glories thing, you've got Fury, who Fury has always been one of the best is well historically one of the greatest divas of all time, right? Up there with Choi, up there with like Hanmin, up there with Void, one of the best divas of all time. Um, like Fury was insane. He has like in as a diva specifically, he's nuts. He can also play Orisa and Sigma at a pretty high level, so he provides a lot of flexibility there. Question around what he can play other than that, like you know what I mean? Can he play like Reinhardt? Can he play Winston? Can he play Wrecking Ball? I probably think he can play like something like Wrecking Ball. I don't know about Ryan Winston. We just don't know. Do they have another tank? Probably not. But Fury Diva is very, very strong. I just wonder about flexibility in that kind of role. But we know that his Diva is elite. We know that already. So there's that. Kind of questions going forward. It's going to be someone like MN3 and Zest. So those two DPS. MN3, I've heard legends. I've heard murmurings of his talent and how good he is. I haven't watched him a lot personally. I am ashamed of how little I've watched Korean contenders outside of like O2 Blast. Um, I haven't watched enough. I've watched a little bit. I've watched a lot of T1. I mean, I've watched a lot of Talon. I've watched a lot of O2 Blast, but not a lot of T1. And I wasn't really watching a lot around like Element Mystic times, so I don't know a bunch. I could watch him after. I want to get through this first. We can watch VODs after, but he looks like he's a very talented player. Um, he's been in this organization for a little bit of time, for at least a year. It looks like. Um, it's just what does he play outside of Carpe? You know what I mean? Does like is does Carp like what does he play? Does he focus on specific stuff like more specific hit scans, and then Carpe plays like Tracer or whatever? You know what I mean? It feels like there's a lot of overlap. If they have double hit scan metas, I think they'll be set, right? Those are two very talented players to have there. I don't know if they're the greatest, right? I don't know if they how they compete with something like Atlanta's where you've got like Kai. Kai's probably better than Carpe, and then you've got MN3. Is he better than Venom on Tracer? And then like Zest is filling this kind of other niche role. He's playing a lot more projectiles, right? He'll be playing your Genji, right? Your typical projectiles. He played on T1 as well. He's coming through this like academy team. It looks like MN3 and Zest are going to be, you know, developmental players, right? They don't seem like players that are going to be coming in the league and wrecking shit in the beginning, right? They look like more long-term prospects because at the moment, I just don't see these two competing at the highest level, right? I could see them being very good later on, right? And I could see them performing and having moments, but do I see them competing with, the best DPS lines in the world, right? Like your Atlantas, right? Like your Houstons. I don't see it. I don't see it personally. Question mark weakness number two, three. I don't fucking know the number. I don't have notes for the last part, so I'm just kind of winging it. Um, well, actually, there's more of a weakness. Aim God. Look, we talked about the tragic situation before. Either way, Alarm isn't here anymore, and they had to sign another flex support. Aim God's probably your best bet, but I don't think super highly of him. Right? Aim God's apparently jacked, but he wasn't great on Uprising. Right? He had moments. Pretty mechanically talented Ana, from what I remember. Zen was solid too. He goes back. He plays for the Justice for a little bit. He's all right. Um, but he was playing on like that weird hog meta where they kind of, you know, mix shit up, and they were able to succeed off that. I just don't think he's that talented as of an individual player. Um, Flex support is such a competitive role at the moment, right? you know, like Flex support is so competitive, and it's like Aim God's pretty good, but does he compete with Ultraviolet? Does he compete with people like Shu? Like, does he compete with all these other flex? Does he compete with Crimzo? Does he compete with all these other flex supports that are so good? I don't see it, right? I wish him the best, but I don't think he's at that level anymore, right? He's had like kind of middling years in the Overwatch League. He was contenders. He plays pretty well on O2 Blast, but I mean, like looking not O2 Blast. What am I saying? Fucking Team CC. My bad. O2 Blast was a completely different team, but he was on Team CC, right? They weren't performing too well. I mean, but they were doing like kind of middling in contenders, and I just, hmm, I don't know. Seems like they're doing kind of the best they can, but you'd hope that if Philly were signing kind of developmental players in other roles like their DPS, why not sign other developmental players and kind of work on like a more promising flex support from elsewhere? Then again, I don't really know what your prospects are and what your options are, but you know, feels like they're dealing with a really, really tough situation, obviously. And Aim God's okay, but I don't really see him being a carry flex support that you really need, right? I think the issue, the issue with Fusion keeping Funny Astro is that like he'd be your only Western player. There's visa issues with that, but also the fact that Funny Astro probably wanted way more money than this team looks like it wants to spend. Just obviously this is theorizing, but looking at this team, I can only see two players on this team demanding high contracts, right? Demanding expensive contracts, right? I can only see two of them. So, you know, it is what it is, right? It feels like um, they're probably going a little budget in certain regions, right? And they don't like they keep their face. They bring in some talented players, but it's kind of to get them by. It feels like, right? Yeah, I mean, but there were a ton of players that were signed out of like Euro 2 Blast, that were signed out of your CCs, right? A lot of really talented players pulled out of that. So kind of have to wait for the next crop of talents to come through. But like, why don't they? Why like were they? Did they lose the duel for the? Did they lose like the battle for like Vigilante? Someone that talented that we'll get to later. I mean, maybe. I don't really know. It just feels like Aim God might have been the best they could get, but I don't know why they couldn't outcompete for someone like Vigilante. You know what I mean? Or I think Vigilante's way more talented currently and has more potential, right? Yeah. Like I see this as like kind of a building potential player. Like same like even Fixa, right? Fixa had a pretty good year in NA contenders playing for Uprising CAD, right? Pretty talented Brig player. And Lucio, right? Played a he played really really well in NA contenders, and Uprising Academy performed pretty well too. Um, so you know, was he on was he on loan there? No, he was on loan to WGS. That's what it was. But wait, yeah, no, he was on T1, then Uprising Academy, and then he went on loan from Uprising Academy to WGS. Okay, I get it now. But Fixa was talented too. I think they have a lot of talent and a lot of developmental players. But yeah, Carpe is a question mark for me. Hopefully he can perform. If he keeps performing at this level, I'd love to see him play. Dude's a legend, right? Um, but a lot of things do have to go right for this team. It feels like for them to succeed, right, and to do really well. I feel like there's a lot of things that have to go right. They've got a lot of potential, and they've got a lot of kind of like consistent rocks. Carpe's a rock in this team, performs pretty consistently. Fury's a rock in the league for a long time, right? Been here for a while. Aim God gives you a certain level of performance, and they've got a lot of developmental players. So, yeah, it's confusing. I think this team probably doesn't perform super well at the beginning, but I could see them picking it up towards the end. Then last but not least, oh, also, I didn't mention it, but there's a new coaching staff. Jin and Chara joined. Chara was on the Charge before. Jin worked for T1, which is the org associated with the Philly Fusion. I don't know much about them. They're Korean coaches. It's really hard for Western coaches to get an idea of how Korean coaches operate, but we'll we'll have to see. Hopefully they do well. Last but not least, Washington Justice. There's a lot of very, very exciting parts of this team, but a few kind of question marks and a few kind of points that are, really big unknowns. So, start off with probably the biggest strength of this team, this DPS line. Holy shit. Decay, Happy, Assassin. Holy fuck, man. Decay is a menace, right? Extremely good hit scan, extremely good tracer, right? He's got flexibility, like completely like flexibility across the board when it comes to hit scans. He played Zarya in the playoffs 2 years ago. Did very well there. He's been around for so long. He's been extremely sought after for a long time, extremely talented player. Apparently a little bit of a diva, we don't really know, right? He's just he's just playing on a team that was a little bit dysfunctional, right? Across the board. But everyone knows he's extremely talented. Everyone knows that mechanically. His tracer is one of the best in the league. Again, there's so many good tracers this year. I can't overstate it. There are so many good tracers this year that I'm hoping that tracer is meta all year round. I honestly do. I hope it's meta all year round because if it is, we're going to see extremely good tracer duels for an entire year, and I cannot wait. Right? But Decay, extremely good tracer, extremely good hit scan overall. Happy, Happy was one of the main reasons for Houston Outlaws' early success across Widowmaker, across Hanzo, across Cast 2. Dude is awesome. He's very, very good. Him and Pelican, not Pelican, him and Dante was a very, very good DPS line to have. Happy is one of those players that makes something out of nothing just from his pure mechanical skill. He's insane. This is such a good pickup to add as a kind of foil to Decay, letting Decay focus on what he's really good at and focusing on Tracer, maybe picking up some more flexible characters, focusing on that kind of stuff, and letting Happy focus on those long range hit scans, your Widowmakers, your Hanzas, right, where he kind of shines. Because like Happy's a pretty good cast, but he shines in that long range hit scan role. Decay, really good Widowmaker, but definitely shines in that close range hit scan role, right? Um, yeah, Happy I kind of forgot about. You don't really think about it, but that DPS line plus having Assassin, Assassin has had his moments. He's had those like weak moments where he hasn't performed to the highest level in the league, but he's improved a lot, and it seems like he's one of those players that can really kind of that will improve over time, and he does fit that kind of projectile role. He plays a really good Sombra, plays Echo at a pretty high level, right? We'll have to see. He's a big question mark for this team, whether Assassin can compete, right? That's one of those things that's going to be a really big kind of storyline going into this season where there are good players, but can you compete with the best, right? There are so many teams where it's like you have good players, like that player's good, like you're good, but can you compete with DPS lines like the Outlaws, DPS lines like Atlanta, right? Like the Shock, like like the Shanghai Dragons. Can you compete with that DPS line? That's kind of a big question. Assassin does have his moments. He's had moments on Sombra. He's like really inconsistent though. And I'm wondering if he can compete with players like that. Like with players like your Pelicans, right? Can he do that? I don't know. Um Looking at the tanks and kind of looking at that role is so Mag is generational talent tank, right? Especially on Winston. And his Reinhardt's pretty solid too, but his Winston is kind of where he made his name as one of the most mechanically gifted main tanks in Overwatch history, right? Comes in the league as a former runaway player, signed to Justice. Doesn't really show it when he gets in the league, um, but his Winston has always been super strong. Um, if he can improve his ball and improve his like Orisa and kind of bring his Rhine up to his Winston level, I think he'll be a very, very good player for this team and can kind of spearhead this, really strong DPS line, taking attention from that and letting them flourish, right? Um, I don't think Mag is the better Rhine per se. I do think Mag is very mechanically talented, extremely mechanically talented. Um, it's just he doesn't have that kind of consistency that someone that I consider the best tank in the world has. I don't know if I'd say Mag is better than Fearless at the moment. I feel like Fearless has more time, but yeah, Mag Ball is something. We saw last year what happens when you don't have a good Wrecking Ball, right? When Wrecking Ball is such a dominant hero for the entire year, we saw what happens when you don't have one. And Mag got kind of difference for that. Same with his Orisa. He's not as good as other players, but as Winston, generational talent. He's insane, mechanical nutcase, right? Kalios is an interesting signing, in my opinion. So played on New York last year. He didn't play that much, did he? Because it was Kalios played for a little bit, and then Bianca was playing for a little bit. No, wasn't that? He's been around for a long ass time. Yeah, it was Bianca, because I'm pretty sure Kalios wasn't playing the whole time. I feel like they were swapping time a little bit, from what I remember. I didn't watch too much New York, but yeah, he played some. He played some, didn't play the whole time. He's interesting. He's got a pretty good diva. I don't know. He just doesn't feel like he doesn't excite me like like I mean obviously Fury had his issues with this team. He didn't kind of fit very well. I don't think that tank line worked too well together. Mag Fury seemed super good on paper, but maybe this didn't work. Whether it be coaching stuff, whether it be kind of disagreements on how to play things. But I think Kalios provides at least some flexibility and allows Mag to focus on improving the characters that he should be good at, right? Focusing on his main tanks, letting him focus on that. And Kalios can provide some, he'll play his Diva, play Sigma, plays Zarya, right? Fit that role. Um, yeah, I do think it's hard to compete with Fury on Diva and Sig. Um, I haven't seen Kalios' Zarya in a long time, so I can't really speak for it. But I mean, historically, he has history of playing very, very well in the past, and hopefully he can bring himself back to that kind of level. But it's just one of those things that we don't really know. But at least having Mag and having a carry on some characters will provide you with that base level of success, right? When these metas with Winston come in, Mag is there. You have that, right? And Kalios can provide some, just some more flexibility for when you need it. And then looking at the back line, first off, I'll start with a positive. Vigilante. I love this kid so much. He is so good, right? Mechanically, I think his Ana is insane, right? He played in NA Contenders Trials for a little bit. I watched him personally. He played on 200 MS. He played on that exact ping. He was so good. He's mechanically insane. He's a mechanical freak, right? And I think he's probably the most promising talent coming into the league, flexport talent that isn't ultraviolet. Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, he's extremely mechanically strong, and I think given the time and given the right environment, he can develop into one of the best in the league. So I'm super excited for Vigilante to play. Super, super mechanically strong, super, super individually talented player. Krillin, on the other hand, is a very consistent player. He's always been fine. He's kind of mid tier, probably getting towards the lower tier with the kind of increase in talent over the league, but he's not technically a liability. It's just, backline is a little iffy if Vigilante can't step up. I think he can, but Krillin does provide you with a certain level of like, Ana, a little bit of a solid BAP, right? Iffy. He played on London for a little bit. Played on was it Dynasty too? No, it was T1. Okay. No, I'm thinking of creative because fuck. What am I? I was thinking about Bedosin and like Bedosin going over, but either way, um, Krillin is okay, not great. Yeah, and then opener is a massive unknown to me. I don't know anything about him, right? Obviously played on Gen G a little bit. He played in Australia for a little bit. I can't speak for him, legitimately. I don't know enough about him. There's the funny haha closer last year, opener this year. Oh my god, that's so funny, guys. That's funny, but I don't know anything about him. I talked about Trong in my last talk. I think Trong is a menace. I think he's such a good brig. I think he was the best brig in contenders outside of OG. Um, so I think opener's a very big question mark. We'll have to wait and see. But this DPS line is insane. They've got really, really strong talents like Vigilante and like Mag that, given the right environment, can develop. As some people mentioned before, the staff. They added Tidala, which is a pretty good addition. I know Glads have had some coaching, woes in the past. People don't really know what's going on with them or what happened in the past with them with their decisions and like kind of why they never really seemed super cohesive. No one really knows what that was. Tidala was a part of that team, but very good things have been said about him. That's a really good addition. And, you know, after 2 years, I will say this team has done kind of middling throughout the year, and they haven't always performed to what you'd think they would, but they have had their moments, right? With like pulling out the Giga Hog meta, right, and making that a thing, right? Pulling out Hog Zarya and making people play to their game. They did a very good job of doing that, so you have to give them credit for something like that, right? You have to give them credit for that. It does feel like this team is like the NA version of Hangzhou. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of extremely talented players with a staff that doesn't seem like they're providing what they need to this team. Obviously, we don't know. It's just like an outside assumption. Like I cannot speak for this team. I cannot speak for what's going on inside the team, anything like that. It's just they don't seem to adjust very quickly, and it feels like a Hangzhou situation. Except Justice is committing to is sticking to their guns and committing to it and saying like, yeah, we're gonna stick with these coaches and work with it. Which is kind of like what Hangzhou does, but Hangzhou just gets rid of their staff every 3 months, you know, which probably not the move, but either way, staff is a question mark. I hope they can perform and I hope they can bring up this team. Um, and you could say that sure, like it's about perfect meta changes, but they did find that. They're the ones who figured that out, right? So you have to give some credit to their staff, right? They're the ones that brought that out, I believe. They were the first people to do it, I think. It was them, and then or was it people in the west, in the east that figured it out first? Not too sure. But I remember they were playing Hog Zarya first, and that was first them, and then was it them? Okay. Because I remember Justice kind of popularized it, at least in North America, and made and kind of proved to people that it was superior to like your six man at that point, because it was so hard to kill backline. But um, yeah, that's where we are. A lot of very very talented pieces. This DPS line is super super talented, especially Decay and Happy. Some flexibility in Assassin. Mag is a generational talent on Winston. Hopefully you can be a little bit more flexible. Kalios and Krillin and Opener are big question marks to me. Like if they can perform at like an elite level, you know. So that's kind of where I am with this. I think Vigilante is going to be really really good. Hopefully you can, he's put in an environment where you can develop. So that's kind of the team reviews over. Let's get to power rankings. So I already ranked my um, Atlantic North division, kind of how I think they're going to perform. It was Boston, Toronto, London, New York, Paris in that order. And then I'm going to do the Atlantic South on their own. And then afterwards, in like each division, I'm going to do that. And then once that's done, I'm going to mix it all together and do like a final power rankings of where I think all the teams are going to end up. So let's start off with. Okay, so I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. So I think if we have to get down to it, the worst team of these, or the fifth place of these, is going to be the Florida Mayhem, right? I like a lot of Florida's players. I like Sir Majed. I like Hydron, right? I think Adam's pretty talented too. I just don't see how the rest of their team competes with the rest of the league, right? You look at their DPS, like your Checkmate and like your Mirror, right? Can they compete as a second DPS versus teams like Atlanta, versus teams like Justice? Can they compete with Fusion, right? I know they're not going to be playing them because it's different divisions, right? But like, can you compete with players at that level? I think they compete with players like Paris's, right? But they compete with like New York, who has Yaki. I don't really know, man. Like you look at New York's roster in comparison, right? Who's like a middling team in a division above them, right? You look at Flora and Yaki. Do they compete with this at this level with this team? Not really. Like their tanks have a lot of question marks around. There's so many questions around Florida that I just don't know what to do with them, right? Um, though I do think they have some high points like Sir Majed and like Hydron. There's just a lot of questions around their tanks, a lot of questions around Onimo specifically, and kind of their staff. Next is the Philly Fusion. As we talked about before, they do have some solid pieces, and I think that having a consistent player like Carpe and like a really, really talented veteran like Fury does give you a leg up over players like the Mayhem. And the Fusion DPS line does have a lot more flexibility to me and feels like it can cover a lot more bases at a higher level than fusions can, right? And then mayhems can. So I give them that leg up. But still, they're lacking that kind of finished product that puts you in the top tiers of your division. So I struggle to put fusion any higher than just above Florida, right? I give them that leg up because they have players like Carpe and like Fury and like super talented DPS. Um, but that kind of middling backline really scares me. Okay. Um, sorry, I haven't caught up with any of this. Toronto. Yeah, so I talked about Toronto earlier, where Toronto's backline's fucking insane. But okay, next. Okay, this is a hard one for me because I know who I think is first. I just need to decide who's second because I thought about it earlier and now I'm kind of iffy. Third, Washington Justice, I say. I like all their players. Again, I like Mag, I like Decay. I think they're great at their specific roles. I think Happy's really good at his specific role. Flexibility and the history of this staff and their adjustments to metas is what concerns me, right? I question whether this team can adjust in a probably fast-moving meta state that Overwatch 2 is going to have, and that worries me. So that alongside like histories of inflexibility as well as histories of kind of missing synergy and teams not working together and histories of like attitude problems and those kind of things really concerns me. So I struggle to put them higher, but they're definitely not. I think they definitely have a certain base level that you're going to get from having Happy and Decay on your team, right? As well as super, super promising players like, I mean, openers coming in after kind of coming out of nowhere. You got Vigilante, who's mechanically insane, right? You've got a lot of talented players coming in, but there's a lot of room to grow that kind of puts them at this spot, right? So, number two. So, this is my bottom three. Number two, I have the Houston Outlaws because biggest concern for me is that tank. So, just not having Piggy as your only tank is concerning to me. Um, Specifically because you just don't know what's going to come around. I don't know if he can play ball. I don't know if he can play main tanks, right? I know he can play Sigma, but not all, his Diva's solid, but I don't think he competes with someone like Atlanta's Diva, right? And alongside that, they don't have a main support who can focus on stuff like Brig. I mean, last year might be consistent, or he has played in the past, and I think someone can adjust to that for sure. And I like their staff, but I think they have really talented DPS, right? Especially Dante and especially Pelican. I think Pelican's probably the best player on that team. Merritt's going to be a very talented hit scan, right? But Iris is a very good BAP. Lastro has a pretty strong Ana and Zen, but I don't think it's top tier. I think their DPS line is top tier. I think their supports are very good. Piggy's a question mark. I think he's good, but I think just having a top tier DPS line is scary to me, right? I think a lot of teams do that, and that is kind of it's not the best way to go about things. You need a really consistent tank line and a very solid back line to, support those kind of carry DPSs, right? I think they'll get you something, and I think having those two will give them the ability to push past teams like Atlanta during certain times, right? But when it comes to a full season and when it comes to being able to cover every meta as well as having generational talents, I have to put my number one spot on the Atlanta Reign, right? Hawk and Gator covers pretty much covers not pretty much, but it covers a lot of the tanks you're going to need, right? It covers your Rhine, covers your Winston to a degree, it covers your Diva, covers your Sig, right? It covers Roadhog too. Um, they've got at least those down, right? When it comes to ball, when it comes to Orisa, actually they've got an Orisa too. When it comes to learning Winston at a higher level and playing ball, right? They have to improve there. That is like their biggest question, right? Whether they can cover a lot of those gaps on their tank line, right? But they do have a very, very high level of play on their roles. So that gives them this certain level of performance that I think you're going to get through part of the year. Alongside that, Kai, top two DPS, top two hit scan in the world. He is insane. Kai is so good, right? Having someone who can perform like that at such a consistent level, such mechanical skill at such a consistent level throughout an entire year, unheard of. The only other person that could do that is Lip. Only other person, right? He is such an influential player that he makes up for like he's better than any other hit. I think he might be the best DPS in this division, right? Probably over like he's competing with Decay. I think Decay is probably the closest person, but he's probably Decay and Pelican. I forgot about Pelican, yeah. Decay and Pelican are his closest competition. I just think Kai versus Pelicans are really hard to debate because they play different things. But I think the gravitas that Kai has and his consistency is what makes him such an influential player. And then also you have Nero, who's a very, very good DPS, alongside Venom, who's one of the most talented tracers to ever come into the league. One of the best. So that is that. There's that. And then again, I haven't even gotten to their backline. I can't stress it enough. Atlanta's backline is a generational talent. Literally two of the best players to come out of contenders, two of the best players that have been playing the game for so long, but have been underage, so I haven't been able to play in the league. And there's been bidding wars over them for so long. OG is one of the best main sports in the world already. Mechanically, he's been winning for a long time. I have a ton of faith in this backline, and it provides them such a solid core between those two and their tanks, as well as having Kai. There's just so much going for this team, right? It's so, so good. I think it's hard to argue against Atlanta being the best in this division just because of winning pedigree. They've been winning recently, right? Went to the finals recently. They have some winners. They lost a very important piece, but they added in a much better backline, much more flexible backline, as well as two pieces to their DPS line that can at least fill in parts of the gaps left by Pelican, right? If they still had Pelican, it'd be insane, right? If they had Pelican and then added Venom, there'd be zero questions to ask from Atlanta. Like zero questions. You know what I mean? If they still had Pelican, this would be a completely different story because Atlanta would be already at the top. Atlanta would be insane. Who should I gamble my bank account on? No financial advice shall be given here. But so that's my set rankings for both the Atlantic divisions. I'll settle that one now. In Atlantic South, I have Atlanta Reign number 1, Houston Outlaws number 2, Washington Justice number 3, Philly Fusion number 4,